Yeah, popcorn.
Popcorn, is that right?
We could probably set up a little stand out here and make some money.
Maybe a marquee out front.
It's the cocktail hour too, by the way.
I like that better.
It's in a tub.
You'd be surprised how government will work with
Smooth.
Block the view.
Girl?
I'm a view quarter between each of the screens.
See, you're
Blocking his view quarter. Oh, man. Walt's got my best side.
the public wants to know, and you're blocking.
Yeah, we'll move it, it doesn't matter. That's all right,
Down on that
so we
table
want,
down there. Walt?
nah,
Credenza down there, looking over Stephen's shoulder.
This is Lynn. Yes.
I can't find the one, just the right place.
you want just the right spot, the sweet spot, yeah.
Shuffles before it lays down.
I could go to the next room.
Stop.
It's a full house. There you go. Is that the steps in Rome? No. Utility fountain.
We ready to rock and roll? Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, November 24th Community Economic Revitalization Committee meeting. We're convening at approximately 5:30. And special welcome to our esteemed guests. And Jay. So, I want to first check in with committee members that we had a chance to review the minutes. Any changes, corrections? Move approval.
Second.
By unanimous consent, and approve the minutes. So moved and done. So, our committee business for the evening, we have a couple of things to roll through. And I think Keith is passing out what I presume is included in the committee package. But Keith, I just want to check in with you first.
Yes, sir.
How do you want to proceed?
I thought we could review the CRA open house first, and then review the CRA resolution, and then finally review the CRA RFP process. I think we'll be spending the most time on the resolution and the RFP. The intention with the open house is just to bring the committee up to date as to where we are in planning for our December 3rd and 4th open houses. We feel like things are coming together well. We've sent out notifications to many people, and we have moved forward pretty substantially on the communication plan at this point in time. I wanted to review briefly the boards that we plan on using, and this aligns pretty well with the presentation that we will be making as well. Lorelei and Jay will be primarily delivering that. The boards that we have up here, and here to have a copy of that, or pass those along, appreciate it. Pass those. Great. The boards that we have prepared should be helpful in describing our process. So the first one, of course, is examples from other communities. In this particular case, we've included a couple, one from Bremerton and the other in Shoreline. Both of those communities have adopted CRA ordinances and are moving forward with a CRA to some extent. There are obviously many others within the state, and we certainly can talk about those both in the presentation and at the breakout tables the evening of the open houses. Moving on to the next slide, which is the process to date. Lorelei would be explaining the process that we've gone through and then allowing the public to express their support for the various guiding principles that we've developed. And that would be, again, at a table. Process going forward is informational. It's where we are and, more importantly, where we're going. As you can see, yes, sir?
Do you want to know about the exciting typo on the previous slide?
Sure.
In the first column, you've got a plural singular problem.
Okay.
I saw another one of those later on. I'll
Really?
give you
Okay.
bonus points if you can.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Come on. Okay, got it. Thank you. All right. And then, of course, we have this fairly complex but also very important slide that overviews the CRA powers and the CRA legal powers that Jay will be reviewing. We have this slide that deals specifically with what are the major intentions with the CRA resolution that we'll be talking about later this evening. Primary objectives are to establish findings of blight, which you can see are included in the resolution. It actually physically establishes the community renewal area by adopting a specific boundary for that area, and then it directs staff to take certain next steps, including preparing a request for proposals or qualifications, identifying possible city contributions, defining a process for selecting partners in preparation of a community renewal area. Both of those resolutions and the community renewal plan will require full council approval before we move forward with those. Here's an opportunity for the community to participate in this process. Again, at breakout tables, what areas need improvement, and yeah, I got that one. What areas need improvement? People will be encouraged to add post-it notes to a large map of the downtown and our community renewal area, identifying where they think the problem areas are and where they think the areas that could benefit from attention through the community renewal area are. Request for proposal process, a slide here that provides a brief overview of what the RFP process is and what our key principles are. Of course, that there's much more detail provided in the background piece on the CRA RFP, request for proposals process. And then we invite community members to, again, using a large board, affix dots or post-it notes to which one of these objectives they see as being most important, or which one of multiple objectives they see as being important. This slide is intended to illustrate the relationship between the comprehensive plan, the community renewal plan, and the downtown plan, showing that they inform one another and relate to one another. Again, we go back to the map of downtown, inviting people to again add post-it notes or stickies to areas that they think projects are necessary or needed, specific properties that they may find to be considered to be blighted or in need of redevelopment. And then finally, we have a board that will invite people that don't find a convenient way to outlet their idea to affix that to a board. And of course, all of these comments will be collected and developed into a report type format. At the end of the evening, Lorelei, Jay, and I and other facilitators will report out what we heard at the various breakout stations throughout the evening. So, Jay, Lorelei, anything to add to that? And, yes, sir.
So it seems odd to me that the two boards with the map asking what areas need to be addressed don't extend to the southern border. That seems strange.
Wonder how those got cut off.
We can rescale that.
Thank you.
Yep, I haven't printed them yet.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. It should show the whole CRA boundary. All right, unless there's other questions about the open house process, we're ready to move forward to
Committee members,
the resolution.
anything?
Just one quick question, I know I've got this problem with the dot thing. Is there any way to make sure we don't have people, like, if you put all your dots in one spot, one person can do that, and then everybody else puts one dot in, but all of a sudden it looks like it's much more than, because somebody front loaded all their dots. Is there any way, if you only have three, will that prevent that problem?
That was the thought.
Okay.
I think the last time we did the dot exercise on the principles, we were more liberal with our dot distribution. People had, I don't know, 6 or 8 of them. And
More
some
like 10 or
people,
20.
yeah, some people.
No, I just wanted-
Lorelei and I are gonna be much more
We're frugal.
frugal with our dots.
Yeah. Okay, it's just I don't
No,
want
I-
it front loaded so we get a misrepresentation of what the everybody.
Or you
wants.
could encourage people to identify their top 3
Three.
or,
Okay, even number 1, 2, 3, you have to
Yeah.
put them here.
And someone will be sitting at each of the
To kind of
tables
watch.
and
refereeing.
refereeing.
Hey, dot
But
fall.
we should be clear, so do I get to spend all 3 on one value? I mean, isn't that a ground rule of the dot process? I've seen it
Yeah,
played different ways.
I think your issue was that there were so many dots that,
Yeah.
whoever went up first made it look like everything was tilted in
Yes.
one direction and it would potentially
Okay.
influence people who are coming later, right? So if they only have 3 dots, even if they put them all in one place, it'll hopefully balance that out.
Okay. Just so we get a clear representation of what they really think, that's all I want.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have, let's see, I have a comment and a question about the overview. So the comment part, thanks for putting it all together. The examples from other communities, the pictures, my challenge is neither example, from my own perspective, is anywhere near as beautiful as I imagine can happen in Olympia. I think in Bremerton's is Bremerton's. And it's sort of, I think of Bremerton's as a bit of a cement jungle along the waterfront. And my own expectation is something much, much, much more beautiful for Olympia, because I think that there's that opportunity. And Shorelines is, it's a successful project, and it's Shoreline. But I think part of the ongoing challenge, I'm not saying there's an answer to this, but for the record, my whole interest in the CRA process is to stimulate engagement and investment in things that, first, the public at large has a say in and can craft. And it is a partnership. The result, though, is something that is just truly beautiful, right? And it fits into our website. So it'd be nice if there was some way of reinforcing it. I feel like quite often the objective of this doing something extraordinarily beautiful that the public supports is lost, particularly under people, from people that don't really want to do anything at all. So it's something like, so we're after something that is worthy. So anyway, that's my editorial.
I think we can see if we can find some pictures that are a little more dramatic and
Maybe.
Or even just maybe reversing which ones are bigger and.
My favorite, example of a private waterfront area that sort of more to scale of the city of Valencia was Nanaimo. Waterfront shops along Nanaimo and, anyway, just for the record. And then, the other, that was my editorial, I'm now off my soapbox. Unless committee members wanna beat me up for.
Nope.
But the other part is, we have on our agenda tomorrow evening, a presentation under special recognition around this, which is fitting this in. So how is that presentation? Is this that presentation?
No.
Okay, so how's that presentation?
The presentation that I anticipate tomorrow evening is simply an invite to the community to attend this meeting on December 3rd and 4th, and it will be using this invitation as the outline. I'm anticipating 2 or 3 minutes and hopefully have some commentary from the committee supporting that invitation. But that's what it is. It's a public service announcement.
Okay. Thanks. Anything more?
Yeah, so I feel like is the word grammarian? I don't know what it is.
Grammarian.
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 So, on page 2, the guiding principles. The first 2 are active, the next 3 are passive. So, the first 2 create, and the next 3 consider. And, yeah, I would suggest that number 3 is eliminate blight and stimulate reinvestment. And number 4 is something like use redevelopment concepts. And the other is support or,
Got it.
thank you.
Active voice.
Grammarian.
Mm-hmm.
Taking you and teachers activity.
Okay. Good for now? Let's talk about the resolution.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the resolution, and Jay is the author of that, although he had many contributors as well, so I'll let him lead the discussion on that.
It's pretty straightforward and bare bones. There's, the findings try to relate to the statute and identify health, safety, and other factors in downtown that retard economic development and create economic blight as well as health, safety blight, and then a series of examples, factors, and then examples of those factors. I think it's paints a reasonably appropriate picture, I think, for purposes at this time. If we were later on to exercise some extraordinarily aggressive powers, we might want to even deepen up depending. So for example, if we were going to condemn a particular piece of property, we might supplement the findings, but I think for our purposes, I think there's your conclusion that these are blighted pursuant to the statute would not be arbitrary and capricious, because I think there's a pretty good record here. Okay. At the time of the hearing itself, or the resolution itself, we might want someone to testify, Keith or someone, regarding these details as testimony, and then you make the findings based on that factual record. Probably put the report that's been submitted into the record, so we have a factual basis for your findings. But I think these are pretty straightforward, actually. Then, as you may know, you have an option to actually delegate to an agency the community redevelopment authority, for example, a housing authority or a public development authority. You choose, however, to maintain that authority yourself, which I think is what was intended. And then we have three specific action items that you authorize the city manager to move on. The first one is to prepare for your approval and review forms of request for qualifications and proposals, and we'll get into what that exercise looks like. The second one is identify assets and various incentives that you're comfortable putting into the RFP, RFQ to suggest, well, to really invite developers to come forward, that you're willing to put some things on the table, as we've talked about, existing land, so on. And then develop a criteria and a process for evaluating proposals, excuse me. So if we're lucky enough to get some of these proposals in, you've asked the city manager to think with you about how you will select what criteria, whether you'll do it yourself, whether you'll have a subcommittee or a public-private committee or whatever. So those are the three work products at this point, without having to reach conclusions. But we'll talk about all three of those right now, actually.
Good with the resolution?
On 6B,
Mm-hmm.
is it land within the CRA?
The 60% figure,
Is it even the land with the CRA?
within, the,
Yeah, my understanding is that A and B both are within the CRA.
right.
There's a typo in B that she's
That's,
filling out.
and actually, that's
Oh.
what I was reading from the sixth.
Oh, I see.
line.
Yeah.
Within the CRA. So,
Well, why don't we just strike with the CRA, which is wrong, and put that in the beginning of B, the way we did in A, within the CRA.
60%, okay.
Okay? I think, Keith, you have the pen on this, is that right? You have that?
I can, sure.
I think it's on your machine.
Okay.
And we also need a number on approximately how many acres we're talking about.
so I have, unless committee members, anything else? I've got a couple of things. So 3581 has, RCW 3581 has an economic development component to it as well. And at one point in this process, we actually quantified the loss of jobs in downtown as a result of the restructuring of the state that consolidated employment into the Jefferson building. So there are a number of vacant buildings that used to be occupied by state workers. So there is an economic development component to that in terms of lots of jobs and everything in town. And
Negative economic.
negative, that's right.
Economic loss.
Economic loss. I guess we don't have to add that.
No, I'm happy to, I think that's great. I also wondered, and we didn't have enough time for this purpose, but we were also going to check back with the city whether we could develop, if there were any crime statistics or emergency medical calls or something that would give a sense of sort of, if you will, social, I won't say decay, but social decline of some sort.
You know, we have a response log, particularly for overdose activity.
Yeah, I mean, if we could show a trend over the last 5 or 10 years, increased overdose activity, increased police calls, increased, I don't know what the data would show, but if we could, I think we're gonna look at that and add that to it. Also emergency medical calls, which could be I think that gives also a characterization of the social decline, which is relevant to health
Right.
safety.
And some of that information was corrected, or collected for the Outdoor 3.
Maybe outlying back areas.
Included, yeah,
Yeah.
into the outlying factors.
If you have a homeless census over several years within this area roughly, that's a,
Okay.
paints a picture, not a pretty picture, that's one of the,
Well, it's not a pretty picture.
No, I
We
know.
want it to be better.
no, I agree,
Doing a
from a
benchmark.
legal perspective, better.
Right.
The worse the better?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
worse the better.
Yeah.
So, okay, so social indicators and the economic indicator in terms of net job loss, and I think those would be helpful additions. And then I have one other thing that I was less clear about, but we have it pretty well quantified now. And that, and it's a public asset, it's actually a public-private asset, and that's personal landing. So we have a condition assessment report that basically is going to lead to condemning Bristol Landing and complete loss of the wooden landing, unless there's reinvestment. And that landing was built as a result of local improvement district agreements with all of the abutting commercial properties. So the Bristol Landing and its financing was actually a public-private partnership. And it remains a entry point for a number of business establishments.
Or we have it listed in 5C,
Well,
but we could amplify it.
so, and this actually, I guess I should have clarified here a little bit. It's the economic development portion of it, and in terms of a commercial connection. And
So you're saying at one time it was an important
Well, it
private
continues to-
investment that now is deteriorating?
it continues to be
Right.
a commercially important contributor that is in need. It's all the things that are stated here in terms of aging infrastructure. Maybe there isn't we have at least the means in the condition assessment report to quantify what that potential loss is. If there isn't some means of, if there isn't some means of addressing that, and there's a commercial connection, and I guess I am not making myself clear, that the whole development of that landing was in part helping to create and present a connection, a commercial connection to our waterfront. So the local improvement district investors were all of the marinas and commercial waterfront establishments along that landing that paid into the landing. So there's the asset, I think, could be quantified in terms of its commercial value, as well as the cost of the public, or just simply saying that it's aging public infrastructure. What's the cost of replacement? How do we go about replacing it? And I'm not saying that would specifically go in the ordinance, it's quantifying these things in terms of its commercial value.
I think it would be as indicia of blight, the Percival Landing, which the business community, contiguous property owners funded to provide a linkage between the commercial district and the waterfront, is deteriorating. That suggests that we've lost an economic asset. In addition to a physical asset, sort of an economic asset. I think that's about as far as I think we need to go. What the replacement cost doesn't prove it's blight or not, it's But the fact that,
It
I
was
like, I
support
think your
that
point that it was
statement.
important to the business community to make this a linkage, and it's deteriorating, suggests that some of the fundamental assets of economic development are deteriorating,
And,
are at risk.
right,
Okay.
so just a slight enhancement there.
Got it.
And I would, and it's more a matter of, I think we can really defend that statement with our condition assessment. Not that we need to put the numbers in the ordinance, it's more that I think it's a defensible statement.
Right, and
that
I
there's economic
would
value.
encourage in the record, independent from the resolution discussion of, this captures, in some ways, this doesn't even go far enough in capturing the sense of place that business community and elected officials and the public feels about downtown.
Good.
Because and there'll be record, minutes, which is great, but we don't need all of that in the resolution, so, but we can enhance that one.
That's part of it.
Good.
Okay. I'm good.
And I apologize, there's actually, the homeless count is listed at number 7. 56% growth from 2006, I guess, to 2030. Yeah, pretty significant.
So, one question to the mayor and to the rest of the committee is what your wish is as far as moving this forward to the city council for consideration. Do you want to see this again at a CERC meeting, or do you want to move it forward to city council as another business item?
Yeah, to my committee members who are comfortable moving it.
I'm ready to go.
I'm ready to move it now.
Move it to
Okay.
council.
So we'll make these revisions and take a look at the future agendas, perhaps set agenda setting tomorrow, dial in the appropriate time for that.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm sure, the council will want an opportunity to comment and, but I think moving it on to them as soon as possible is good.
Okay.
And I think that the things that we've just spoken about here, I feel confident and comfortable that there can be some drafting of it.
Oh, yeah. We can make this. Will be your expectation that at that time you'll have a public hearing on this, or will you just have testimony from Keith or somebody, or how?
I think that before we, I think we need council input.
Right, before we go
first.
to the hearing.
Yeah, I would suggest that we go and have a briefing with council, either perhaps even in a study session format or as another business item, and then come back and have a public hearing at a later date. Do it as the two-step process.
We decided for forms, it says, on the A, it was request for qualification and request for proposals. There weren't gonna be two separate things, could we combine them? Have we thought about that?
No,
Well, I think we want to go through this is just a request to go develop something, and then we're going to ask, I think, for some input now about how to think about developing it. We'll come back, and at the end of the day, we may have one or two. It's not clear yet.
Okay,
Judy, where are you on?
I was just on A.
A,
It's just
thank
like two, it's two separate, and I was like,
I thought it said, yeah,
I don't know.
I did that purposely because I'm not exactly sure how it's going to shake out.
Okay, so that gives us flexibility if we decide
Absolutely. Oh, yeah,
to
absolutely.
put the criteria.
You just asked the city manager to develop,
Okay,
and he'll report back.
what's the best way to do it?
Well, I was just gonna say, in terms of the two-step process,
Mhm.
my interest would be to link this as closely as possible to the open house.
Well,
Open house occurs and.
I was gonna, that's exactly what I was gonna mention too. So my assumption is that, this is a draft resolution. We have an opportunity for public comment, not, in the public hearing sense, but, comment and input, at the open house.
No, I'm assuming that the open house may reveal things that would inform this. I mean, after all, we're asking them to identify blighted areas and blighted, potential projects. We might fold that in. They haven't thought about it, whether, yeah, I don't wanna preempt that.
Right.
Great.
So then this would go to council after that, or do you think you need to?
Yeah, this is just next week.
Yeah, the open house
Is
is
next, yeah, so, okay.
right away.
We don't need, yeah, we don't need to.
Might as well just do it right now. Go next door.
Yeah.
We, let's see,
This will be on December 2nd.
we have an opportunity, we can include the draft resolution in the packet for next week, if you feel like you can add, the changes that we said.
It's only Monday.
So, yeah, I don't know if we'll have police data, but, you know, this is a work in progress. Until it's passed, we're gonna be working on improving it, but,
Okay.
and we can include it in the packet, subject to things we learn
Sure.
at the open house,
That's
which
what-
may,
I think that's a really helpful way to frame it.
Yeah.
The
until it
thing
gets
that I-
passed, it's in motion, as it were.
So what I'm sort of going for here is the more information that we can pass on to council at this point, the better. Even in draft form, emphasize in draft form. And include that we're looking for an opportunity for a work session, and there would be a future public hearing, which is in our current work plan, framed for sometime in January.
Okay.
At least that's the way it's listed in your current
Right.
work plan. Okay. You okay with that? Okay. Anything more on the resolution? I thought it was pretty well.
Yeah. Very nice, thank you. Both copies of it.
Very nice. Put it on the wall.
So now we get to really some work, which I guess is yours, is
Yeah,
Please.
okay, so we spent a little time trying to think about how to bring back to you the concept of the RFP, and then there are quite a number of questions out there that are unresolved, and sort of where we landed, assuming that it would take some time to get through the first set of agenda items, and that we wouldn't have, hours and hours in front of us, was that what we really wanted to do is take the time to make sure that we're all on the same page about some of the foundational elements of why it is that we're doing this and what principles we're acting upon, but then to spend the time brainstorming what are all the questions that need to be resolved. And maybe there are a couple of them that we can take down tonight because there's good, clear agreement on them, but maybe there's a set of them that we need to then take a little bit of time to bring you some options or some additional information or develop a work program that we can use to help to answer them. So that's the kind of discussion that we're looking for tonight, is to really sort of set the boundaries on, where we need to go next, and see where we do and don't have agreement. So this document that's included at the back of your packet is meant to be a facilitation guide, more or less, a starting place to sort of walk through, do we have this right, what would you add, what would you subtract, and kind of go from there. So process-wise, I guess, as a starting place, does that seem to make sense, that we can step through these one by one? And okay. And the questions seem to hit the right kinds of points from your perspective? Yeah, okay. Good. So, in terms of why are we doing this RFP? Why are we doing this? Points A, B, and C are what we really saw as crystallizing out of the conversation, that we're wanting to try to identify potential development partners and test market realities, but also support both the CRA process and the downtown master plan. Anything, does that sound right?
Yeah. I'm wondering also if we want, out of these proposals, part of, I think what I'm visualizing is that we illustrate to some community values, we actually get some pictures that the community then is able to comment on.
Okay.
That's, so that then they can respond to something. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to get?
Yes. So, okay, gotcha. So out of the responses, that there
Right.
would be some images
Yeah. Or even if it comes
that
through the.
spark imagination.
Right, or something that, even if it comes through that process, that when we actually go to start looking at these, whatever group is helping us to look at these, that they have something to really see, and the community can follow it, that they get what it is we're trying to accomplish. And sometimes that's easier with a picture than with words.
So some of that's addressed in 2C.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with reinforcing.
Yeah, I have something similar, so. Go on, on that?
Are we staying on number one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I'm good with them.
Okay, good, thank you.
okay, so I think very much in line with what Julie's saying, that, what I hope to get out of the process is to, is all these things, you know, in terms of stimulating interest in development and investment in our downtown. I think what's really important in all this, though, is to emphasize the part that creates a public, creates a role for the public in that development and investment process that is both exciting to our public and is driven by the public in terms of the intended outcomes. So the thing again that I want to go back to is what this is, from my own perspective, an antidote to is the misguided approach that we've had in the past to development projects that have led to a development of something that really a significant part of the public don't like, they don't want that built. So the whole point of this process for me is to create a process where it becomes it becomes a true partnership, so that the outcome is a development proposal that the public really wants, because they say, that's beautiful, that fits our downtown, that meets all of our principles. So, you know, it's really changing the way we do development. So I was hoping that more of that would come out in terms of what do we want in the RFP? We want something that really fully includes the public in the development process and creates something gorgeous. Right? I don't know, and maybe I'm.
No, I think that's right. I think under 3G.
You get to it.
Yeah.
You sort of get to it, and in fact, you know, I've seen RFPs in which they're asked, the developers are asked, what is your process for involving the public in design and
What's your
charrettes and
software
interaction?
program?
Some of them actually put on their team someone who's experienced in outreach and facilitating that kind of dialogue, so it's functional, and that could be a criteria for selecting. So in this case, people with a real track record of involving public and private projects go to the top of the heap, obviously.
Yeah, I get that, you know, and I see it down there in terms of the hopes part or the entry to this. I don't want to miss an opportunity to really tell the story of what's behind this, which is a different approach to development that we have taken in the past. And so it's just, I think that, you know, the folks that have been really negative from the beginning about community renewal, I think have come at this from an angle of, this is just another way to shove development down the community's throats. And then it's exactly the opposite.
Well, my guess is we will have a narrative. As we describe the city, we're going to talk about, frankly, probably some of the failed efforts and some of the ways in which the public has expressed their interests and their values. And there are existing committees that have expressed that. And any developer who wants to come here needs to know that, and is gonna have to deal with it, and work with it, and work with the people. So I think we're gonna be quite explicit, is what I would imagine. This
Me
is-
too,
this is
but
not
maybe
gonna
I'm
be-
going over the top, I'm just looking for that upfront thing,
Right.
number one.
Okay.
What do we
Right.
hope to get from the
Yeah.
RFP?
Got it.
Got it.
Yeah, okay. Beat that one into the ground, Julie.
Well, I'm gonna beat it one more time, because really,
Good.
it's the intent, and I want the public to really understand that we're in this together, and that investment's not just in their public dollars, it's in their hearts and minds saying, yes, this is our value, yes, this is what we want.
Well, this is the city we want.
Yes, and so that, and that we wanna be part of this, we are willing to work together as a community to move us in this direction. So it's really about that, it's public investment, but just not dollars, it's
Yeah.
really about the,
Okay.
Your charisma factor.
yeah,
Yeah.
so they bring us together and work together.
All right. All noted. Now, there's a bit of a fine line between number one and number two, but in terms of principles for process and emphasis on this is about the process of doing the development and we're doing the selection. Inclusion, partnership, transparency.
I think financial feasibility has been a central theme up till this point. I'm not sure how to get at that here.
Yeah, so that does show up under the criteria for actually selecting the developer under C, return on investment.
Mhm.
Although I think using the word financial feasibility explicitly is,
Yeah,
needs to be added.
And
okay. Yeah, it does. Needs to be one of the criteria, number three.
Did we mentioned the other day about experience and qualification?
Yeah, successful developer will have experience and qualifications doing these things, will have a track record.
Okay.
Can we jump right over to, anybody wanna say anything about number two, or should we just go into the criteria?
I just wanna make sure, because it was under 2C where we were talking about transparency and process includes public involvement, and I think it's important that we have continual and constant education about what we are doing and why we are doing it, and what we hope to achieve. I know it seems like it's beating a dead horse, but the more times we can get that message out there, I think then people will start to really hear it. And then they can see how they're part of that process, where they are gonna, their voices are heard.
Okay.
To be, word hope, it's a nice word. Expects, requires,
Demands.
Yeah.
extracts.
Why not?
We'll go with expects until something else pops up.
So we'll see. I follow your urban development. Let's go right to that, Jay.
I'm sorry?
Oh, no, I was just being, but instead of hopes, in return, the city's investment will be in high quality urban development.
Oh, yeah. It's clear. Okay. All right, I think we'll move on to the criteria, and these, again, I do expect that these will be informed by the open house and by other processes, so don't assume that this is the last time that you'll ever get to, but recognizing that we've already missed the financial feasibility one and added that into the list, what else do you see jumping out at you here?
It's like, A, I said yes with exclamation mark. That was just even.
You know, I still don't see where we have examples of their performance in other cities. Indeed, if we were
So,
lucky enough to
okay.
get a real developer or a couple, it's not uncommon for city council members or committee to get up and go and see what they've done, see if they like it.
Right, but, right. So their qualification when they submit them would have to show actual examples of projects. That's the Q part of the RFQ. And that it would have to be in alignment with these criteria. They'd have to show that those projects matched up. So you're right that it's not it's implicit
Okay,
as opposed to explicit, that
and it will be.
what they will be, yeah, right? If it were in the context of a whole request for qualifications, it would say, we're requesting qualifications that show a track record that meets these criteria.
Okay.
But I think that for the next time that this comes out, we can just add all those words in there.
So here's a picky comment on 3C. We're doing things to achieve two things. One is private sector investment, and the other is long-term benefit to the community. I would reverse those.
You know, this timeliness one is a different way of getting at financial feasibility. F.
I have a suggestion on second page, the I, having spoken to various members of the community even today, treat our urban waterfront and vistas as priceless assets.